Hey guys, we're live. We're doing some Power Apps development using the Northwind database. What we did is we exported that access data into Excel spreadsheets, each table, and then we imported that into a blank access database, and then we used access to import that into SharePoint. The data made quite a journey from access into SharePoint, but it's all in there now. And if you followed me yesterday, I fixed a lot of the relationships so that we would be ready and set to actually do some lot more development here within Power Apps and actually make a lot of progress within the application. And as we had last week, I brought Kurt on. Kurt, are you there?
I am.
All right, so we got Kurt on the line, and if you missed that last week, Kurt was actually my mentor from over 20 years ago. Actually, taught me much of what I know about databases, and got me my first job a long time ago. And now it seems like the roles are reversed, and I'm sort of teaching them Power Apps. So Kurt, you're really excited about Power Apps, right?
I am. This is gonna be awesome.
Yeah, very good, very good. Well, I'm going to show more of my screen. Were you about to say something else?
No.
All right. Very good. So I do have my screen showing here. Hopefully you all can see that. And if anybody has any and notices any audio or video issues with this live stream, please let me know in the chat. Otherwise, I'm just gonna jump into Power Apps and get going here. So as a review from last week, a Sunday. I'm gonna hit run here. So we have the home screen. We have a call back to the old Northwind Traders logo here on the home screen. And we brought in the data. So we created an employee screen. So what we have here is we have a gallery here on the side, the left side. And we did spend a little bit of time up front working on the menu system and also an application header. So we did a little bit of component development last week. So if you're interested in how we pulled that off, take a look at that. So here is the menu component. And so here, Victor, welcome back. So hi, professor, and your own professor. You know, that's funny. Kurt's nickname is actually the professor. Isn't that right, Kurt?
Yeah.
Audio is just fine. Video as well. Very good. Thanks for letting me know, Victor. And so here's our menu component. We also have this header bar that we added to a lot of our screens here that we created. So here's the employees. We have orders, the order screen. So what we have here, if you click on this first label here in the gallery, we have a customer. So you see I have a customer reference. So all of my foreign key columns I've called an entity reference. So if it is a column that references the customer entity, I'll say customer, and I follow it up with the word reference. Okay, so you'll see that in my columns today. And then if I click on this one down here, employee, this item dot employee reference dot value, and the value is going to get us pretty much the full name of the person or whatever. So if we're looking at a product, we have a foreign key to a product. I actually set everything up as a lookup column within SharePoint. Now, typically, I don't like lookup columns, but they work really well with forms. And since we're using forms for most of the development here within this Northwind application, it's going to work really well here. And if you're interested in how I've done relationships before, which is just to add a column, a numeric column that references the ID in the other SharePoint list. That's how I would do it. If you check out a playlist on my YouTube video, check out the work order system I did for a garage. You'll see that among my playlists. And I built out a whole application doing just that, using no lookup columns. So I thought this was a good exercise, how to bring in some data from Access, a classic timeless database system called Northwind Traders. That's 20 years old. So okay, we have the orders data here, and then we have customers. Now this is something that where we ended off last week, where we had the customers listed off, and we inserted a little gallery here. And as I was fixing the data with some of you yesterday, I had a live stream yesterday. By the way, Zabu. Hi Zabu, how you doing? Nice to have you. Thanks for stopping by. and also Rachel. Hi, Rachel. Very cool. All right. So we did a little bit of this at the tail end of our live stream yesterday. So if you wanted to see what we did here, I just wanted to test the relationship that we had here. So if I go back to design mode and actually click on this nested gallery, I click in here and I brought up the orders data and I filtered that orders data. Do you see that? By the use of a filter column. And then I've got this column here called customer reference. And I compared it with this item.full name, which is the full name from the customer. Okay. So if I run this, you can see on each of these little records for the customers, you'll see there's a little count. I put a label above the gallery. So we've got, so I referenced the gallery, the nested gallery, and I looked at the count there. Okay. All right. Very good. So that's what we have so far. And let's take a look at our data. Let's look and I came up with I found this really interesting URL that talks about the Northwind database. And they had some good ERD type of stuff here. So just looking, I'm going to zoom in here. Northwind database entity relationship diagram. So just looking at broad strokes here, we have employees. Okay, so we have employee screen. We have orders. We have customers. So the orders has a relationship between the employees, the customers, and the shippers. And then an order has order details. Okay. And then each order detail will have a relationship to a product. And then products have relationships between suppliers and categories. Okay. So we can do that. So we've done 3 of these. Let's add in shippers here. And let's take a look. Let's find a screen that we've used before. Let's say employees would probably be good. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this screen. And PowerUps is great with duplicating screens like this. And all the references within that screen, when you duplicate it, it won't point to the first screen. It'll actually point to the copies that we made when that screen was duplicated. Okay, which really helps us out a lot. Okay, so this will be shippers. Okay, so the people that will actually ship out our products to the customers. Okay, so over here, instead of employee screen, let's say shippers screen. So we'll do that. And then for this gallery here, we'll take a look at shippers. And we do have a first and last name for shippers. And this starts with, this is the little search thing that we did last week. Okay, so we got shippers there. And then over here on this form is giving us an error because we don't have the reference updated yet. So we'll go find shippers. Okay, and wants to replace the data card. So I'm going to say yes. And let's see what type of stuff we have here. I'm going to bring up Access. Access has a full entity relationship diagram with all of our different entities here. Okay, so we've got employees, we have customers. Customers place orders. And then what we just determined is an order will have a shipper involved that will actually ship out the orders. Okay, so if you look at employees, customers, shippers, they have a lot of the same information: company, first, last name. And I believe there's another table out here that does almost the exact same thing, perhaps the supplier. So you have the company name, first, last name, so on and so forth. Okay, so I just wanted to always go back to this. So this is the full ERD for all the tables here. Okay. And all right, so we have this. I'm going to click on home screen and then come back. Whenever you duplicate a screen, sometimes the screen name here at the top isn't updated. So I have a new comment. Hello, good content like always. Thanks, Fernando. Nice to have you here. All right, so we are dealing with shippers. All right, so we have this screen. Let's look at this save button. Let's see what's going on with the save button because I see an error. That's typically what I like to do is I like to go over here and make sure that everything is resolved. Now, before we went down an exercise and we made sure that somebody filled out a particular field. I think it was last name for the employees. So we're not going to have that validation here. Um, so shippers don't have a first and last name, but I bet that they have a company name. Let's just say company. There we go. Shipping company A and shipping company B, C. Okay. And then we can open up our SharePoint data. Let's just bring that up. Let me show you a shortcut to get to your data sources. And that is to click on this little database icon. You see a little cylinder, almost looks like a can, like an oil can or something. Those are your data sources. And let's go look for shippers. And you click on the ellipsis or the three dots here, and we'll say edit data. Okay, and here's the data. So look at this. It's a little bare. I mean, we do have an address, city, state, zip. Okay, that's good. Now, they're in Memphis, Tennessee. It looks like they're the same address. Maybe they share an office. But that's the data that was in the original Northwind database. So perhaps we would want to put in let's say the city, and we could have a comma, this item dot state, and then we'll do an ampersand, this item dot zip. Okay, there we go.
Darren,
Can
I just interrupt a second here?
Absolutely.
So back in the old days, we used to have zip code databases where we could just enter zip codes and it would fill in all the information for us. So they still have those kinds of things available?
Yeah, a lot of times these days they're set up as web services. Now, your way of getting to external data, let's say that's out there on the internet. Now, we could create our own lookup table. If we had some data to import, that would actually be a good practice, something to have in our database. So somebody doesn't have to, if you type in the zip code, hopefully it would just pull in the city and the state automatically. That would be great. Right. Now we might find, they're always adding connectors to the Power Platform. We could add in a connector. Hey, Toby, thanks for stopping by. Glad to be here again. Very good. Thanks a lot. So yeah, we might be able to find a connector that's out there that we could tie into. You might have a paid service that perhaps we could pay for to make sure it's always updated. But absolutely, that would be something if I was building this for a client, a particularly large client, and they're doing, they want to shave off in seconds worth of time where it was costing them a lot of money. The more time it was taking for somebody to enter in more fields like that, I would definitely look into pulling something like that in. Absolutely.
Yeah,
that's a good idea.
People don't realize that when you're doing data entry, it might be just a 5-second thing, but if you're dealing with a million entries, that's 5 million seconds. That's a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Actually, just this week, I was working, and somebody told me I was writing an application for some salespeople, and the sales that they were dealing with, there were sales packages into the thousands, and they were dealing with hundreds of people coming in at once. And they literally said, if this takes too long, it's literally going to cost this team millions of dollars. I'm like, wow, okay. Yeah. Normally you wouldn't think about that. Just, I'm just building an app here. But sometimes it really does matter. Absolutely. So this is the data. There's not a lot of data that we're looking at for shippers. We have the company name is pretty much what we're looking at there. And we pulled in their address, and that's pretty much it. And then over here we could, so we have a shipping company, so we can update this stuff here if we wanted to. Okay, so pretty much shippers is done. Now, what I would want to do, since we're actually, if this ended up being a long list of a few hundred different companies to ship out products, instead of searching for the last name, we might want to have this searching within. I'll probably just do a copy paste. Starts with, and we'll say company name or company, I think it is. Okay. So we'll do that. And then if I said shipping company, and the only thing that's different is the last character, right? So there we go. So we know that it's actually working. So that's good. All right. So that's done there. Let me see if the new button. So it does a new form on this form. And we do, if we look at the action of this button and click on select, we're doing a submit form. Pretty much the shipper screen's done. Isn't that cool? That was pretty easy. So, all right. So we've got shippers now. And I think what I'd like to do is create a little order screen, and we can start, pulling in some of this data. Now, what we've done so far, we've created a few screens. Now, perhaps what we need to do before we move on is actually create a little menu item for this shipper's screen. So I'm going to copy the name of the screen on my clipboard. I'm going to go up to the the app on start, and I'm going to go into the code. And let's add in this.
I have another question about practice, if I can ask.
Sure, absolutely.
Is it a good point too?
Sure, yeah.
So I know when we're developing applications, and maybe it's just a preference thing. But in my world, I'm thinking I look for redundancy, and maybe you're trying to create that within your tutorial. But at the same time, when I see like home screen, employee screen, customer screen, there's a lot of screen in there.
I know. I don't like it either.
Okay, so I didn't know if that was just for the purposes of your demo, or we're trying to talk about maybe the proper way of developing an app at the same time in this.
Yeah.
One of the things to think about, I think.
Absolutely.
I always like to look back at my applications and say, okay, what is redundant here?
Yeah.
What can we make look a little bit slicker?
I appreciate you asking that, Kurt, because I want to change it too. Okay, so what we'll do here is we're just blindly in this gallery, we're just making this button display. By the way, I did have Victor come in. It seems time to format component menu to know what screen we're at. Okay. Oh, that's okay. So we'll do that next, Victor. That's another great suggestion on this menu. If I can talk right here. All right. So we got home screen. We have the names of the screens. And that is considered best practice by Microsoft, is in the screen name to always have the word screen in there, to have spaces. So it could be read off by a screen reader for people who need accessibility options there. But we don't have to display it on the button like that. Okay. Right. So let's go. So this is a button. So how do we display things in a button? We go over here to the text property, and we see it's dynamic. And it's this item.screen-to-go-to.name. Now, what we can do, there is a function here called substitute. And it's looking for, okay, the text. Okay, so it's going to look at the text, the whole screen name. And what we're going to do is we're going to look for space screen, and we're going to replace each time it sees that with an empty string. How do you like that?
Okay.
Is that what you're thinking, or did you want to? Do you have any other ideas to?
No, I think that looks great like that.
Okay, let me go back here.
And I also like Victor's idea of selecting the selected one being a different color,
Absolutely. Okay.
Can we even take it a step above that, and instead of being a selected one, we can actually have a hover going across it too, the one with hover in a different color?
Sure. So right now, if you watch me, I'm hovering. It does change colors. Now we can spice that up a little more. Is that what you're talking about? How it changes colors a little bit?
See that? Okay, you're hovering there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you like that?
I do. I love that.
All right.
And then when you select it, you would change it yet another color.
Yes. Okay. And Victor has another system so he's given us some code here. So Victor is displaying, I've got his comment on the screen. So this is a different way of doing that. So split, there's a function called split. So let me show you what Victor is talking about here. So for this button, we wouldn't have to use the substitute. We could use a function called split. Okay. And split, and you know what? I'm going to comment this out just for the moment. And let me see here what you have. A split. So what he's saying is use the word screen as a delimiter. And so it's going to break that up within 2 items. And then he's going to use the first function to get the first item out of that. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Or we could probably how I would do this. Okay, so we would use the name here. You would split that out, and I would probably use well, if we have more, well, yeah.
I mean, you could just not put screen in there, right? I mean, in your text.
For the names of the screens?
Yeah.
That's true, but it is a Microsoft recommended practice. So whenever I do these videos, I always like to show people as I'm going along. I like to name my variables. How Microsoft has a white paper out there of recommended practices, and I just try to follow that. So this allows me to do both, to follow their guidelines and also take out the unnecessary screen name there. Okay. So what shall we do for a selected? So what we could do is we could do a white background and the blue color.
Yeah.
We could do that. And I'm going to bring up Victor's last comment here, just so as we're stepping through this, people know. Yeah. Okay, so over here, what we'll do for the fill, let's go find the fill. Okay. And we'll say if, we'll say app is an object within Power Apps, is the application dot active screen dot name. And I'm just going to comment out this RGBA stuff there. Active screen dot name. If that is the same thing as this item dot screen to go to dot name, then I want it to be white. Otherwise, I'm going to use this blue color that we had before. Okay, so let's just try that out. And it looks like, see, the home screen is it's all white. So it is working, but we also need to change the font color, right? The font color. All right, so what we'll do to change that, all right, so we'll take this and then we will go to color and we'll just change this right here. Okay, I'm gonna hit a Control S. Back to screens. And there we go. How do you like that? You guys in the comments, what do you think of our color scheme here? So if we hover over the button, it's got like a darker blue. That darker blue matches with this dark blue up here. Okay, that's nice. And you know what I don't like about that white is it's almost too much white because we have a bunch of white over here.
It's too much like the screen. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you could just make it a very light color blue, maybe very light color.
Okay.
Or very light green, like the lightest one you can get.
Okay. All right. So what's great about that is we can go off the blue color we had before. Now let me go in here, look at this. And so this is a blue color. Okay, so instead of this white, I copy that. And over here for white, I'm going to use a function called color fade. Give it a color, and then we tell it how much we want it to fade. So let's go with like 80%.
Nice.
And let's see. So that is for the color. I'll copy that. And then for the back color, use that. Ooh, I like that. What do you guys think? Very cool. I think we're making good progress. All right, so we got shippers, customers, orders. All right, Rachel. Hey, Darren, how did you make the height of the screen so long? Okay, so now if you're talking about for the menu, is that what the question is? The dimensions of the screen itself, if I go into settings, this is where you can actually set up the dimensions of the screen. So I created it as a tablet screen, and I just went with the defaults on that. So if you mean something different, Rachel, let me know. Okay, so Rachel said yes. Okay, very good. So that I guess that's how you'd say how I made it as tall as I did. Is I just went with the defaults, and then but if there's any question about the menu, I think what I did here was for the height, I went with I accessed the app object, and there is a property of the app called design height. Okay, so you can dynamically get at that value. And if I hover over here, look at it, it's 768. Yeah, very good. Okay, so let's go over to orders, and I'm going to go back over this ERD diagram. So in a lot of ways, this orders screen is sort of like the center of the action for this application, I feel like. Okay, now if I go back over to our app, this is our current order screen. And I feel like we need more space here. And so there's different ways to set up screens. So far we've been doing a lot of, with the exception of the header bar at the top and the menu on the side, we just have a gallery on the left and a form on the right. And to be honest, that's the type of format that I like to create for my screens. If you don't have too many fields and you don't have too many rows, and it's a very simple, straightforward one entity type of thing. But if you have a lot of records, typically the users will want a lot of filtering and sorting and all kinds of stuff. And I build that all in one screen to take up the whole screen. So we'll have that gallery take up the whole screen. We might have some filtering things at the top. And then from there, if they want to view or edit an individual record, they would click on it or click on a little arrow or a button, and we'll take them to another screen where it's got all the data for that one record. So that's what I'm imagining. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to redo this order screen in a new way, and I'm just going to duplicate it. And I don't like to rip out things because you could reuse things by copying and pasting, or you might change your mind, right? So I'm gonna just duplicate that screen, and sometimes it takes a few moments. And so I've got a few um, screen designs in my head just over the time doing web development, application development, and power apps. So these are just two of the screen designs that I have. If you look through my my work order system for I did for a garage, there's a few of those in there. Probably the most complex one was the one that I did for a like a shopping cart system. So that needs to be quite dynamic and a little more on the complicated side. So perhaps we can take a look at that, or you can go in and look at that playlist and see how I set that up. So here is our duplicated. It just added a little number to it. And for this order screen, I'm just not going to call it order screen. I'm going to call it, the only thing this screen is going to do is it's going to be a listing for the orders. So I'm going to say orders listing. Okay. And, I think I'm going to rip out this form here. Rip that out. And I think I'll take out these buttons as well. And we'll make this wider. And make it take up more of the screen. Now, a lot of times when you're building out a screen like this, is you want like column headers in here. So how I do column headers for a gallery like this, I'll go over to this plus sign and I'll add in a rectangle. Now you can, this is one of the few times I actually go to this insert menu in here, because a lot of times I like to see the, the tree view. And the reason I go for the rectangle over here, because if you go up to the insert, where's the rectangle? The rectangle is nowhere to be found, except if you can go to icons. I think it's icons, scroll all the way down, and then you'll get to the shapes down here at the very bottom. So I don't like to go through that. I just like to click here, bring over a little rectangle. And Yeah, so we'll do this. Okay. Um, I think I'd like to have this darker blue color that I use for this component, unless any of you guys have a really good idea for a color that goes well with these other blue colors. Let's see here. I'm just going to copy that color. Now, if I was creating this app for real for a client, I would be using my application template and all the colors. I'll have a screen that's got all my color palettes. I've got 6 colors to choose from. They're all dynamically defined in variables. But I just wanted to keep things pretty simple, straightforward, especially if you're coming to me, as a beginner coming into Power Apps, and you want to see how I build an app. I didn't want to sort of make it too complicated, So for this rectangle here, I'm going to go into the color. I'm going to paste over that color that I had, so it's going to be a little darker. Okay. So for application headers and also gallery headers, I like to have a nice dark color there. And then I like to bring over labels that will have a white color. So let's go over here and pick white. And I like to make sure it's nice and big, maybe 20 or 18. 18 will probably be nice there. Put in a left padding of maybe 15. And you see how in this current screen I have customer list of, I have the word customer, a colon, and then I have employee. Well, if we spread this stuff out a little bit, we wouldn't need these labels on each row, right? And we could make this little less bulky. Okay, so this first one, let's make this customer. And I find in headers like this, it looks nicest as all uppercase like that. Maybe even bold. I sort of like how it looks right now. In fact, I might go 1 point a little smaller on that. Okay. What do you think about that, Kurt?
Love it.
All right. And for this gallery, you can actually set the template padding. I like to have that at least down to 2 sometimes. So I like to be able to see as much data as I can. So now that we have this heading up here, we don't have to have this customer thing up here. So let's get that out of there. All right. And for this label, see how this label doesn't really fit in there too well? I mean, it was a little off. I'll go in for a label like this, and I'll dynamically make it as tall as, if I click on the gallery, you go over here to the properties, you'll see this template size. So it's exactly 42 pixels in height for one row, for one record. And I like that to be around number like 40. Now, if I ever make that 50, I want all these labels to grow with it dynamically. So for this label here, in fact, I'll click on all 3 of these here. And for the height, what you'll do is you say parent. Okay, now the parent is actually the gallery, right? Parent dot template height. I have the exact height of that row. And then something else I like to do, this makes it a little more complicated, but this is the heading here. And so you notice on this label here, if I make this really narrow, like 100, the text in here will start to wrap and it looks sort of ugly. So if you want to sort of size things around within your gallery, this is starting to look like a grid here. And you might want to sort of change the width of this and move things around, and you want everything to move dynamically. This is a little trick that I've sort of taught myself. Actually, I shouldn't say taught myself, because I actually learned this back in your Visual Basic class, Kurt. Remember when you had a level 2 class at the community college, you're teaching us how to dynamically move things around when we're creating our own buttons. And
Yeah.
I think we made a file explorer back in the Visual Basic class that we had.
Yeah.
That's where I learned this type of stuff. So you can set widths and heights to be dynamic. And to be based on other values that perhaps might be dynamic as well. So here is the heading. Okay, so this is a label. It's label 8. I could say LBL orders customer heading. So it's a little. If I refer to a control in an expression somewhere else in the app, I always like to name it something meaningful. Okay, so for the width of this is going to be cool. So the label dot width. Okay. And you notice we're here on this label and we're setting an expression on this width property. Kurt, do you see this for the customer? It's got it highlighted in green.
I do.
Yeah. So when you're referencing something in an expression bar, it will highlight the things that you're referencing.
Nice.
Yeah. So, and then also over here on the X, now the X is 0 and the Y is 0 because it's in the upper left corner. Okay. But if we set up another column header over here, it won't be 0. But I want to have this to be dynamic. And how you make it dynamic is you reference that label up there. And I'll say dot X. Okay. But then I want to subtract the galleries, the parent, which is the gallery, its X property, which brings me back to 0. Okay. Now it doesn't have too much significance right now, but as we duplicate things, we'll see how that's more and more important. Okay. So I am going to copy and paste this heading. And as you see me do development here, you'll see me make use of the copy and paste quite a bit. Okay, so customer. So this next thing will be employee. And this will be the employee who placed the order for that customer in the system. Okay, so we have that, and I'm going to copy that name, although it's not very meaningful because it still has customer, but that's fine. I'm just going to copy that. And then over here for the width, I'm going to reference that dot width. Okay, so we've got that. And then for the X, I'm going to say that label dot X, and then I'm going to, of course, X should be capital. Subtract parent dot X. Okay, see how it lines up with that label above? Now, what if we made this label dynamic to be right next to this? So you see there's a little bit of space between these two. I want those to be right up against each other. So I'm going to copy the name of this label. And for this label here, I'm going to say that other label dot X plus that other label's width. And that should give me exactly where I need to be. So what's cool about this? Check this out. If I click on customer and I'm like, I don't need that much space. This is maybe a number, an ID, and I make that much smaller. Well, everything else is going to move with it if you make it all dynamic like this. Isn't that cool? What do you think, Kurt? You still there? I might have lost you. Okay. Well, Kurt, if you're there, you may have gone to a restroom break.
I'm here.
Okay.
I had to step away for a second.
Yeah. So what'd you think of that? Of this dynamic sizing here. So if I click on customer and make this more narrow and it all moves.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd like to see more of a highlight in there to make it more like anyway.
To make it more stand out more, are you talking about the currently selected record?
Right.
Okay, yeah. So how I do that is, okay, I've got the gallery selected. I'll go down, I'll hit template fill, and instead of light yellow, we can just say yellow. How about that?
Sure.
Okay, so we have that. And then you know what? Let's bring up our data for orders. So I'll click on orders. We have 48 orders. And so we have an employee, we have a customer. Oh, we might want to pull in the shipper. We could do that. The order date, the order shipped. Okay, all this is pertinent information. Then we have status of the order. Okay, so we've got all kinds of stuff in here. So I'm glad that we sort of created more space just for, and also within here, we can make the font a lot smaller, maybe down to 10. So we got more room to work with. And
so like, if one of the questions I have in this is like, say with shipper, since you brought in the shipper, is there a way that you can like click on this record and then make a pop-up list drop down like for shippers or something, you know?
Absolutely.
That might be a good little trick to know how to do in that.
Okay, sure. Let's say, I'm trying to think of a business use case for that. Let's say they've got a bunch of orders here, and some of them haven't been shipped yet. And you might want to look a list of them, of maybe all the orders that were placed today. And it's like, I'm just going to go through here and select different shippers based on some criteria. And so we could have a little drop down list, and we could actually, on the change event for that drop down, or have a little save button on each of these records, we could actually have that saved back to the database. Absolutely. So, all right, well, let's pull in some more information, and we'll get to that here in a few moments. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so this one is, what is this data here? This is when it was last modified. So I'm going to go in here, look at orders real quick. I want to pull that data back up. Okay. And let's look at, okay, probably the order date. Okay. So we'll say order date. We've got that. Now we may not want to see the time because we're going to have a lot of other data here. Perhaps we just want to know the date. So how we strip out the time there, we could say date value. That's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is to use a function called text, and then we could provide a format for the date. And so Victor says, no need to keep employee anymore as there is a header already. Absolutely. Thanks for reminding me of that. So we'll go here in employee. Absolutely. So if we go to text, we don't need that anymore. Absolutely. I'll take that out. So that will give us some more space as well. All right, so this is order date. So let me copy and paste that label there. And we're going to base this one off this other one. So let's say X plus width. And there we go. And then I'm going to copy the name of that label. And for this label on the X, it will be the label X. And we'll subtract parent, which is the gallery.x. Very good. And then for the width, we'll make that dynamic. Okay. All right. So what's great about this dynamic stuff is that we probably don't need all that space here. We can just sort of move that in there. And also for this date, all this, we actually need to rename this label up here. This will be order placed. Okay. And we could probably scale this down a little bit. Okay. So if I wanted to make this extra small, you don't need that much width. Something else I could do for this date is we could center align it. Okay. All right. So we have order placed. So let's pull in shipper. Copy that. I'll put that up here. Shipper. And I will do a copy paste there. Okay, we have a shipper reference, which is our foreign key column. Dot value should give us the value of that. Now, right now we're dynamically based on this one. We need to be dynamically positioned based on this label. So we'll grab the name of that label, and then down here for the X, we'll paste it there. And then also for the width, we'll paste that there. And we probably want that to be left justified. And we probably want this to be a little longer. There we go. Okay. Now, Kurt, I'm going to get to that example that you brought up here in a moment. And I want that to be based on if the order is not closed. So let me see here. So let's pull in order status. We have a order status. And we have, let me actually just show you the relationships here. So we got orders. You see we have an order status here. So we have this data in SharePoint, but this is what it looks like: new, invoiced, shipped, or closed. So as long as it has not been shipped yet, we could change the shipper, or at least it would make sense from a business standpoint that we could change it then. So, and here we go. There's the shipper reference right there. Let's go in here and, okay, so with the shipper, we need to show the status. So I am going to do a copy paste there. And up here we'll say status. We'll base it on this one. It's plus the width of it. There we go. And I'll copy paste that one. And this will be status, order status reference, dot value. And that should be based on this header here. Okay. Very good.
Nice.
Yeah. That wide there. All right. So we might, okay. So if we wanted to put a drop down here, let's add in a drop down here. And you said you want to be able to change the shipper. So we'll put that here. And we'll set up this drop down to be a shipper. And what we want to show on the shippers is the company. Very good.
Yep.
And we might want to make this a little longer if we have the drop down in there. Okay. And then we could use that width.
Now that's a CAD drop down object, right? In other words, it's just one that shoots with power apps.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so if a person wanted to, we could actually design a component for a drop down that would have multiple fields and all that, right?
So,
not saying that we should do that today. I'm just saying
right.
we can do it.
You can create your own components. That is true. However, okay, so this is a drop down list. We have another type of control called a combo box. And a combo box is like a drop down list on steroids. It can have multiple items. So we've got, see this drop down right here? Right below, we have a combo box. We could add in, well, let me just add one in here and I'll show you what it looks like. It looks very similar to a drop down list. And you can select multiple items. You can do searches within it.
Okay.
Yeah, there's all kinds of other cool stuff you can do. But if you're just gonna have a simple drop down list, they're only gonna be able to select one. You can stick with the drop down. Okay, so one of your questions that you or one of the things that you said is perhaps you want to have multiple things. So a lot of times a combo box is used as a people picker. So if you want to see a person's like photo, their name, and also their job title, that could all be displayed if you click on the little drop down and start to search in.
Okay.
Type in somebody's last name, you'll get everybody. If you type in Smith, you're going to get all the Smithson organization. You'll see their photo if you pick that, and their name and their title. So
yeah, the reason why I ask that is because when you're developing an application like this, the shipping, when you're dealing with shipping, sometimes the shipping costs vary from moment to moment. And so you might want to have that information available to you in the pick list so that you can select your cheapest route. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Within that from a business point of view, that's the reason why I asked.
Okay, cool.
I'm not saying that we should consider that in this because, I mean, we could get lost in the weeds with that. But,
yeah.
Yeah, I just for my own reference, I wanted to know.
Yeah, very good. All right, so what I'm going to do here, I'm only going to show this drop-down box based on a few criteria. The first criteria, I'm going down here to visible, and I say this item dot is selected. Okay, so if that row is selected, I want to show that drop-down. If it's not selected, I don't want to show it. Otherwise, it just starts to look really, a little cluttered or whatever. But there we go. So we could change this to something else, and then also we could base this on, and we could say if this item dot status or status reference that value is, well, let me go look at order statuses here. There's only 4 items. So we have this ID. So we could say, as long as it's less than 3, it can be changed. If not, we don't want it to be changed. So we could do a simple less than. So we could do that, or we could reference these values here. Okay, so we've got the value as long as that is not closed. And in fact, I don't think we need these parentheses in here. I'll take that out. And as long as it's not shipped or closed. Okay. So if I go down here to a new one, it's selected, then I could actually change it. And then what we could do, see, it's not going to give us that for closed, only new. And let's look for the other one. There is a, I don't see any invoiced. So we can't try that out. But, so we can go down here. And then what we would need to do is either on the change event. Now I can't go into that drop down on any other record except the first one. So I'm going to select the first one. But of course it won't show because of, it's not visible, of course. So in order to get to it, I click on it over here in the tree view. So for this drop down, you could go over here to the on change and you could perform a patch here to actually update it. So that's something that we could do. Something that I think would probably very useful for a screen like this is we need to have, so we've got a search first and last name, probably on the customers is what we have. Let me confirm that there though. Yeah, I don't think, okay, orders. Actually use that filter there. Starts with employee search 2. It's actually 4 now on this screen. Okay. But it's going to be customer looking for customer reference, which is, let's go look at our orders. So these are static fields. I actually want to get at the reference here. So I'll go over here, customer reference. Value. Okay, so we could do that. So if we go over here and we say this Axon, doesn't like that. It does like Thomas. Well, we have 3 Thomas Axons, so he's placed 3 orders with us. Not Axon, so that tells me that the last name isn't working. Oh, okay, I see what's going on there. So it's got the full name is that value, okay. So I didn't want to get too much, and also when you reference a lookup field within a query, you're going to get some delegation warnings. So if you run past 2,000 records, that's something you're going to have to sort of redesign. So that's one of the reasons I prefer to upfront with my foreign key columns is to actually have an ID. So there's pros and cons to each approach. So if we look at our customer, see the customer only has the company name of the customer. So you know what I'll do is I will just, okay, so this is just going to pull up the first name of the customer. Okay, we'll just leave that as is. But what I wanted to show was, let's add in a drop down here. Okay, and here we'll have all the statuses, and then we'll filter this grid below based on the status we pick here. So order status. And we will go look at status name. Okay. Okay, so that is, let's give it a good name here though. Drop down list, we'll prefix it with that, drop down list. And this will be order listing status. Okay, use that. And order status reference dot value equals that drop down dot selected text dot value. All right, let's see if that works. Okay, so we've got new selected here, and it doesn't look like it is. I'm going to put some parentheses in here, so we'll match up the two, and we'll have the and. Okay, so all these are new. You see that status? So if we change this thing over to invoiced, we have none that are invoiced. Shipped, we have one that's shipped, and we have a few that are closed. All right, now something else we could do is we could, let's make this a little narrower there. We could have a little toggle or a checkbox that says, let's add a checkbox here. Add a checkbox. And this checkbox will say, show all. All right, so check show all. So if we check this off, we don't care about what's in here. So what we'll do over here in the display mode is if this value, if it is checked, then we're going to say display mode dot disabled. Otherwise, it will be an edit. And then I will click on format text here. No errors or anything. So if I run this and I hit show all, it's going to disable this, which is nice. But then I need to update the query here within the gallery. Okay, so if that thing is checked, then give me all the orders. Otherwise, filter it. What do you think of that?
Good stuff.
And we can sort of indent things a little bit here. They should be. Yeah, I remember when I took a Visual Basic class over 20 years ago, my instructor, he'd mark me off if I didn't indent my code.
Absolutely.
All
Well,
right.
it's actually, if you don't want to indent your code, just don't indent your code anywhere. But if you're going to indent your code some places, you better do it everywhere.
Be consistent, right?
That's right. That's right.
All right. So we know this is working now because I have this thing checked off and I can see all this different statuses. Okay. Then if I uncheck it, I should only see the closed. Okay. So what do you guys in the live stream think about all this? I think perhaps the next step that we should take is the user should have a way of actually clicking on they have the ability to click on it, but actually go into an edit screen. Think that's a good idea, Kurt?
Yep.
All right. So let's add in a lot of times people will use icons for this, which isn't a bad idea. So I'm just going to add in any icon. This is how I add icons to an application. I just add this little plus sign. And then over here on the right side, you've got a better way of picking which one you want. Now, a lot of times people will use this right chevron. And then other people use next. It's got a little circle around it. We could use really anything. Actually, I want right. And to me, I think it looks a little cluttered when every single row has the same thing like this in it. So what I'll do for this icon is I'll go down to visible and I'll set this up so that this item, right, item dot is selected. Okay. All right. So we should have yet a new screen. And you know what? We'll probably duplicate this old order screen and make that the edit screen, the duplicated one. And then we'll rip out this gallery and the filtering and make this form a little bigger. That's what we can do. And of course, that takes a moment. Okay, so this new screen, I'll call this order edit screen. And that's what I'll call it. I'll copy the name of the screen. I'll go back to our listing screen. And that for that little chevron there, we'll click on it. We'll click on action on select, and we'll use the navigate function to move around. Navigate. We'll give a single quote. We'll paste in the name of the screen. We'll do another single quote. And that's how you navigate from screen to screen. Use the navigate function. Now there is a little transition thing here that we could use. My favorite transition is called fade, but if you actually type in screen transition, it's an enumerated value. So if you hit dot there, you'll see all the different transitions you have to pick from. And I'm going to click fade because that's the one I like. There is another thing that we can do here, which is we can pass a parameter from this screen to the other screen, which I do like to do that. A lot of times what people will do, Kurt, they'll create these global variables. They'll set the global variable over here, and then on the other screen, it will actually read in that global variable. And, I was taught long ago that the least amount of global variables, probably the better off you are, the less memory you're going to use, right? It's probably a better way to go. Do you agree with that?
I got a question about that. Okay, so maybe I'm not understanding what you just said there, but if you have a global variable, you shouldn't have to pass anything in. It's global,
right?
So why are we even worried about passing stuff in? Seems like it's a setup for some sloppy programming.
So that's actually what I would say about the opposite. To have everything as global, for me, it seems a little sloppy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So the global setup's sloppy already.
Right.
But then if we're doing both, oh.
Yeah. There are some things that you're almost forced to use globals for. Let's say for a collection variable, if you can create like an in-memory collection within your Power App called collect or clear collect, you can't really create like a local scoped collection. If you use collect or clear collect, it's a global variable. It can be used all over the application. In fact, if you go over here to the data sources and move around, if you have any collections defined, they'll actually be listed over here in your data sources. So you don't have control there, but what I like to do is I like to pass over a specific record to the other screen because I actually started out because I learned about how to create variables using the set keyword. I'm like, this is how you create variables, and I'm going to use a variable here. That's what I'll do. And it wasn't until later, a little bit later, um, where I found out about context variables, which are scoped variables to a particular screen. And I found it to be cleaner. And a lot of times when I use a bunch of globals, sometimes I get confused, and sometimes I'll create an additional global variable that holds the same value. Let's say I've got a global variable out there called selected order. And then I'm working on a different area of the application a month later, and I'm like, oh, I need a global variable for this order I'm selecting on this other screen. I'll just create a global variable and not even thinking of looking for anything else. So I think it just makes things much more tidy and much better off and more maintainable. Um, Go ahead.
So another question I have is, instead of passing parameters with this global stuff,
Uh-huh.
Perhaps it would be better if I were to write a table specifically for the screen, and then have any variables within a record in that table. And then I would just have that table locked in, hooked in as a data source to that screen. And then I could use those variables. I was thinking like that because, for instance, if I have buttons, these days the Latin language is becoming more and more prominent, although many Latin people can speak English probably better than I can.
Mhm.
I think it's an important thing to be able to have both a bilingual program. So if I wanted to have my buttons in Espanol versus English, I could have that all set up in a database and be able to do this dynamically. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And so you can pass those in as a record in a table and have that attached as a data source to each screen. That's what I'm thinking as I'm watching you do this.
That's interesting. That's an interesting spin on that. So yeah, if you were writing a bilingual application, users from other languages, you could have a record out there, and you could have different columns for different languages, or set it up some way dynamically in the database. That's a great idea. Now, I just wanted to clarify, when we pass a variable as a parameter from one screen to another, we're actually, excuse me, we're actually creating a scoped variable. We're actually creating that local variable for that other screen, and we're passing it in.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm gonna name this variable LOC for local. That's a recommended best practice from Microsoft. Always prefix all your local variables with LOC. And I'm gonna call this record. And what's great about calling it record and not order record is that if I use this screen, duplicate the screen for employees or something else, and I keep it generic like LOC record, it could sort of work with anything. So that's why I like to do that. So LOC record. So it's the main record for the next screen to edit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a parenthesis there to pass this in. And I'm going to say this item. It will pass in that current order record. Okay. So I'm going to open up this screen window so everybody can see it a little better. I'm going to click on format text. So it's going to open it up a little more. Okay. So we got 3 parameters for this navigate. And then, so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down the Alt key. I'm going to click on this little arrow, and it should bring over Thomas Axon's order record. Okay. And I went over here. All right. So this is going to edit one record. Now I'm going to take out this gallery because we don't need that anymore. We don't need a search for orders. So I'm going to take out all that.
So what that record, was it a defined record? That wasn't user defined. That was defined by the table, huh?
Yeah. So the this item gives you, excuse me, the this item keyword gives you the current record for that particular row. So if you clicked on the little icon to actually open up that record, it's going to grab that record, and we passed it into a variable, a context variable, which is better than a global variable. And then this screen has that. So for example, if I bring over, insert a little label here, and I just want to see what's in that variable, I could actually type this in, loc record. Okay, and here's the record. Now, if I double click on that, it says it's a data type record. It also has a problem with it. There's some type of an error. Now, for this label wants to display a text value. So let's say there's an ID in there. Oh, look, there's an ID of 48. So it's giving me something. Well, what if I said, okay, who's the customer? So I say customer reference dot value should give me the full name of the customer. So it is passing that record into the screen. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
And then for this form, previously, before I deleted that little gallery out there, it was tied to that gallery. But we don't want it tied to the gallery. We want it tied to that record that we passed in. So over here on advanced for this form, I'm going to go down for item. Well, I don't want it tied to a gallery anymore. I want to say loc record. And look at that. It gave me my the record for the order. So there's the order ID, there's the employee, so on and so forth. Okay, so we could modify the order there. And this thing will save. And we could add a new order record by clicking new. We could do that. And well, I guess we don't need this label anymore, right? Because it's being displayed down here. And we can see up here at the top of the screen, it says orders edit screen, and we're editing an order. Now look at this. We can go down here. What this little form gave us down here at the bottom with all of our foreign keys, all of our foreign key columns, we have an employee. So we can change the employee that is associated with this order if we want. Same thing for the customer. And the shipper reference as well. And so we would just change it, hit save, and it would save it back to the database. So any questions, comments from those that are on the live stream or you, Kurt? What do you think so far?
A lot of material here.
Yeah.
A lot of material.
All right. Well, I'm going to open up this. I'm going to keep my eye on the chat window here. I'm not seeing anymore. Okay. So we have employees, we have orders, we have customers, we have shippers. What about order details? What about that? Well, now, you know what this is? We don't probably need so much width for this form here. I mean, it's nice and wide. That's good. Now we could set this up to be like 12 if we wanted to, so we can see a lot of it at once. Something else that we could do. So this is the header information. We can move this over here and move these buttons over here. Okay. And then, well, let's just put a little label here to make it really clear to the users what's going on. Okay. So we will put this thing over here and we will say, order record. So they realize what they're looking at here. We might give it more of a border, make it really nice and clear. This is the order record. And then I might move this up a little bit. So we have line items. So let's add in a gallery, and I'll go over here and maybe grab this gallery. We'd like to work from a previous gallery. I'll paste it over here. And then let's go in here and let's change this to be order details. Okay, now not all these columns, we need to fix these issues here. In fact, for now, I'll just make this, just look at the ID. Okay. And so this is pulling all the records for the order details. What we need to do is filter this based on these header record, the parent record. So I'm gonna copy and paste that label, and I'm gonna say order details. Is that what it's called? Let me see here. Site contents. Order details. Okay, that's what it's called. Order details. So we're going to filter this. And we're going to say order reference. And we're going to be looking at .id, where that equals. And now we can reference that local variable LOC record. Come on. LOC record ID. That should give us what we're looking for. And there's 2 line items for this order. Okay. So let's go look at order details. Okay. And we're looking for 57 and 58. So what's cool about SharePoint is we can go over here and we can say filter and we just look at that data. So we can go over here and say 57 and 58, click apply, and it'll just show us those 2 rows. Okay. So this is the data that we have to display. And they placed an order for green tea. And I don't know how you pronounce this. Does anybody know? Kurt, do you know? Gnocchi? Gnocchi? And we'll find out, if it's
that's how you pronounce it today.
That's how you pronounce it today. We might pronounce it differently tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
All right. So let's at least pull in the product here. I mean, we could say something like I don't know why the users would be interested in the ID, but for now I'm just going to leave that ID in there. And there's probably not going to be a lot of records. So what we could do is maybe make this a bit bigger so we have more space to work with. Okay, let's say product reference. Products reference, okay. Dot value. There you go, green tea and gnocchi. And what else would we like to display here? The unit price. Okay, unit price. Okay, now we've got these numbers here. Well, what if we want to make this and look like currency, right? Format of currency. We want it to be displayed the same. So what we could do is we use a text function and we give it a little format in a string. And how you do that, you do a little $sign there. And I could say 0.00. And that will, like, if there's no values, it was $38 even. Well, using zeros, it will say, well, go ahead and use that decimal place, even though you don't have any values there. Because what you could do is use a pound sign like that. And if it's not there, it's not going to show it. So that's why I like to use zeros. Now, what we could do is if it was in the thousands of dollars, we could say pound sign, comma, pound sign, pound sign. And if it's there, it will use it. If not, at least, I mean, if it's just under $1, it will at least still have that 0 there. So that's how you format things as currency very easily there. And if you don't want that space in front of the $sign, you could take that out. Okay. Now, typically with numeric values, amounts, you want them to be right justified, perhaps. And I think in this case, we could, we could say price. Unless we actually want to put like a good header bar here at the top saying what each of them are. We could very well have these 3 columns, something like that. So what do you think of that?
I'm really amazed at the level of development you can do with no coding.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, really. This would have taken, doing this in C++ would have taken a long time.
Yeah, I know, right?
And that's if you had a good library.
And when you can't make this type of progress, man, you got to spend a lot of time up front planning everything out. Maybe get a business analyst involved or put on your business analyst hat, make sure everything's sketched out. The users look at it or the stakeholders look at it, make sure they sign off on it because you're going to go in a room and code it for a few weeks.
Yeah.
And when you come out,
4 months. Yeah.
Yeah. When you come out, you don't want somebody saying, oh, well, what do you think about just like scrapping that and make it look like this instead? It's like, no, you want to hash all that out ahead of time.
And these days, I used to be a real. Of course, I come from the old school where 32K was a lot of memory, and so we really had to be careful with how much the use of variables and the way we structured our programs, and so you had to be careful about how much of a pig your program became. So, but nowadays, memory is so cheap. You have so much memory, and the speed of machines are so fast that this thing will probably run just as fast as any C++ program would back in the day,
Yeah.
Although I'm sure there's some C++ purists out there that would probably say no. But it's all about if I can develop my program 80% faster than a C++ programmer can, how much more money am I going to make? And the end user, Snuffy Smith, he doesn't typically care. He just wants the thing to work.
That's true.
And
That's
they don't
true.
care if it's done in C++ or Power Apps or Visual Basic or whatever, So
Yeah.
I think it's pretty awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Now I do notice one thing that we need to change. If I were to run this and I were to go to orders, it goes back to our old order screen. So what I want to do is I want to go to this order listing screen, get the name of that. I'll go up to app. All right, so we got order screen. So instead of order screen, we'll paste that one in there. So we'll be good. So I'm going to rerun on start, rerun it. So now if I go to orders, we get this one. Okay, so we got quite a few screens so far, huh?
Yeah.
All right. So let me go back to our ERD diagrams. We have order details, and we have products. Okay, so perhaps we need to provide a way for people to edit the products because right now we don't have that. So let's pick a screen that we might want to copy. Let's go look at the data first and just see what we're dealing with, what type of data. So we'll scroll down. We'll go look at products. We got 45 products. Okay. On the title, we have this Northwind. There's actually a better field over here called product name. And I made sure this was whittled down. I took out all that. I think yesterday we did all this for this product name. Make sure there's no Northwind traders because that was sort of redundant to have Northwind traders and everything. We might want to carry other products outside of our company, perhaps. Then we have a product code. Okay. So there's not a lot of fields in here in products. Well, there's a standard code, so there actually is more than what I thought. Okay. So there's quite a bit of stuff there. Okay, so let's create more of a listing screen like how we have for order listing. Okay. So let's duplicate this. And while that's doing that, I'm going to count how many tables we have here. Maybe we could go straight down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Exactly 20 database tables. So if you look at how many entities we've dealt with so far, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we just created one for our products. That's 5. So we're at least 25% done with the application, you think?
Yeah.
All right, so we'll have products. You know what we're really lacking with this project? We have a database with all these database tables, but we don't have real requirements here, right? We haven't met with any customers and said, okay, well, how many different roles do you have? And what users need to access what, that type of thing. We might actually break down this application 2 or 3 different portions, perhaps, based on access that they should have.
If I can interject something in there.
Yeah, please do.
Actually, one could say that we've used 25% of the available data, but that doesn't mean that you're not entirely done with the program because, that's a system. And you could write 1,000 applications using just a fraction of that data. It just depends on what your application does. Maybe your application doesn't use all that data,
That's true.
Maybe we would want to create a specialized application for suppliers or for products, So, but now if we're creating a system, you're right. We would be like 25% done with the system,
Yeah.
based on that. Yeah.
So case in point here, let's go look at products, which is I'm having a hard time finding it for some reason. I know orders is tied to or order detail. Oh, here we go. Products right here. Okay. Okay. Well, we're looking at employees. We have employee privileges. There is a many to many relationship between employees and privileges. And here's the mapping table in the middle. And you open up privileges, and what do you see? You just see a single record. So this is a privilege that an employee could have called purchase approvals, but we could set up all kinds of, like, we can set up a different, like dozen different access, permissions that they could have within the application. What we could do in a system like this is say, listen, I've actually done this with some freelancing where somebody said, listen, my budget's only, you know, is only so much. It's not as much as perhaps what I quoted them. Like, okay, well, listen, I don't have to build out an admin screen for every single drop down list and stuff. You can go to SharePoint directly, go in and I don't really like to do that. But if there's no, if their budget is fixed and they don't mind going directly to SharePoint, or maybe it's only the main user that is has some technical ability that you don't mind going into a screen like SharePoint and adding, editing, and removing data from there. Um, for example, looking at privileges, just bringing that up here. They don't mind going in here and clicking on new and adding it. I don't like users to do that, but if they don't have the budget or the time for these extra screens to be built out, you could have either another system or have a different developer actually develop those screens or what have you. So I thought I'd just mention that at least. Okay. So I've got a products table here. Now we have got starts with, and what we want here is product name. Have that, maybe even product code. Okay. And I'm just going to leave it as that for now. And then name. Okay, so this first label will be product name. Okay. And I can move that out a little bit. Okay. And this will be, let's go open up products. Okay. Product name, product code. We do have suppliers, and I think those are set up as, or we should at least have foreign keys for those. But we have categories. Okay, that's nice. So let's at the least deal with product name, product code. Okay. So at least we have those two things. Standard cost, list price. Let's put in list price. Okay. All right, and we probably want to format that as currency. So text. Go. Reorder level, target level, quantity. Okay, quantity per unit. That looks interesting. Quantity per unit. And that's just going to be freeform text. And we probably don't want it to be so wide, so we'll scale that back a little bit. And let's at least add in one more thing here. Let's add in supplier ID. Or just supplier. Now we've got an error here. What is going on with this error? Okay, that's a drop down list. We don't need a drop down list for this one, so we'll delete that. Okay. Okay, so here we have a listing, and we could filter it based on the suppliers. Okay, and let's go with company name, and then we would set up supplier IDs equals whatever is selected from that drop down. Okay, so look at that. We select supplier A, we only see supplier A products, supplier E, so on and so forth. Or we could just show all, and it shows us all of them. And if we want to search for chai, okay, I thought that it doesn't seem to be working for some reason. We're looking in products, starts with product name, product code based on employee search 5. Well, let's go ahead and name this something else here. Call this product search. Okay, so that'll look a little better. So it starts with, okay, so let's just go find some here. So green, let's type in green. Oh, you know what? I've got to show all. That's what's going on. Okay, it doesn't like that. So I know there are green beans in there. Product name. So if I change this A through Z product name, and I go down here, we do have green beans and green tea. We should be pulling that up. Product name. Product search. And supplier. Okay. Or I should probably say or. If it starts with that and it's in there. Okay, so I need to go look. If I click on show all, what supplier is that? It is supplier F. Okay, so if I hit F, it's showing that. Okay, so there could be some more fine tuning we can do for the filter. I don't want to get too much in the weeds on that just yet, but what I do want to do is look at this little thing here that will take us off to a new screen. So let's create. Okay, we have a order listing screen, an order edit screen. Very good. And let's duplicate that and use that for the product edit. All right, so we will say over here for this screen, it will be Edit screen. Okay. I don't know that I really want to mess with any. Let's look at products over here. Now these are reference to an order detail or an purchase order detail, which we wouldn't want to go edit any details there. So what I'm inclined to do is take out that gallery, make this a little wider so we got more stuff to edit things with here. We'll set this up to edit the products, replace the cards. And then for the columns for this form, we'll probably set that up to either 3 or 4. Let's go with 4 and see if that's okay. That's not bad. Let's see what error we have here. Loc record. Okay. Well, it wasn't, excuse me, it wasn't passed in. So we'll go here. Product edit screen. We need to get that name of that screen. Okay, very good. We'll go over to product listing screen. We'll click on this little thing here. We'll make it go there. And it uses that variable loc record. Okay, so we go over here and it pulls up that record. All right, so now we click on this form. Maybe you'll set this up to like 3 because title looks like it needs a little more space there. I could run this and this new and save button should still work fine. And trying to think. Yeah, that looks good. Now, what we don't have is a menu item here for products. Everybody's so quiet.
Well, there's a lot going on here, Darren.
I guess when you make a meal and nobody's saying anything at the dinner table, it means everybody's too busy eating and enjoying the meal then too.
You know, it's funny you said that because that's exactly what I'm doing right now.
Oh, really?
It's a lot of work watching you work.
That's hilarious. All right, so I'll make we'll have a 6 here, and then we'll say product listing screen here. Oh, cool. We've got a comment in here, Mr. Abacus. Hey, sorry I'm late. I'm taking notes. Okay, cool. Thanks for joining in here. I appreciate the comment from you guys. It makes me feel, of course, I have Kurt here as well, but it makes me feel a little less alone that I'm just talking to a camera and just Kurt. All right, so we got 6 in there. We got the new screen. So now if I hit, Rodney. Hey, what's up, Rodney? Just a lot to learn. Okay, very good. As long as you guys are liking what you see here, I'm happy as well. So I'm going to run on start. And okay, so what the problem here is we have shippers and shippers. Okay, that's a little weird. Shippers and shippers.
Well,
what did I do wrong there? Oh, I didn't. Yeah, I didn't set that up right. Product listing is what I needed.
I can't believe you didn't rehearse this all night last night so that you wouldn't make mistakes today.
Oh, I tell you what, guys, before I started doing these live streams, I would spend for an hour-long video. So my live streams, it seems like 2 hours is the sweet spot, right? But whenever I create a video where I like build out a screen, and I don't use forms typically in my app, so I'll spend it about an hour. What you guys see is an hour, but I probably spend somewhere between 2 and 4 hours going through everything, thinking things through, redoing things. I'll record all of that. And then I'll spend days or maybe even a week or 2 going through, cutting out all the ums and the ahs and the sitting there thinking without saying anything. And this is just so much faster. So as long as you guys can hack all the all the times I say ums and ahs and thinking here and there, and of course we've experienced a little bit of redo But all right, so I'm going to hit run on start. So now we do have a product listing. Okay. And so we can edit chicken soup. Where's chicken soup? There it is, chicken soup. Now there's some things in forms that you may not want to show here. So for example, I have title Northwind Traders Chicken Soup. I could set this default. Now, if you're going to mess with one of these are called cards within a form. So you got a data card and it's made up of several controls in here. We could set this up to be based on this other card here, this other text box. I can go in here and I'd have to unlock this particular card, go into the text box and set this up to be Northwind Traders. And so if they go in here and change chicken soup to tomato soup and add to it, this title will be updated as well. So in case you want to do that. And then also in that case, what I would do is I would go into this card and I would hide it, but it will still be saved to the database. Now you see with a form, there's little nuances, little things you got to keep in mind if you work with forms. It just gets a little messy sometimes. That's one of the reasons I don't like it too much. You need to pull out any invisible cards down to the bottom so they don't mess with the positioning of things. And also, you would think product name should be at the very top. I'll move that to the top. I'll probably move product code to the top. And I'll look at other things like product ID. I probably don't want the user to be able to edit that. So I'll move that down to the bottom and then I'll hide it. What about attachments? I don't need to see attachments. That's left over from an Access database. So I'm gonna click on the card. I'll show you something else you can do here. Click on the card and just hit delete. And it'll just remove it out of there. At least it should. I'll just remove it out of there. Okay. And that's how you can sort of modify things. Okay, so Mr. Abacus, I like to see the troubleshooting live. Okay, you're not the first person to tell me that. So that's actually great news. I always think to myself, oh, I need to cut all this stuff out of me messing around with it for 30 minutes because if somebody's following along, this is what my thought process. Somebody's following along and they're trying to create exactly the same thing I'm doing. They're going through all this effort of duplicating all my efforts, then I have to go back and redo something. Then I have to duplicate those efforts. But so it's sort of a good contrasting perspective to see you guys tell me that you like to see the troubleshooting. And well, if you guys like the troubleshooting, you guys will love yesterday's session and the week before that. What were you saying, Kurt?
I kind of like the way Mr. Abacus was talking in there, because if you think about it, nobody writes programs without having to go back and relook at stuff and redo stuff. And so watching somebody debug something is kind of cool, because we might get stuck in one way of doing it, but then we see maybe old Darren over here has another way of doing it, and might be a better way. So but nobody's ever written a program perfectly the first time all the way through.
That's right.
Maybe I did a Hello World perfectly once, but that's been about it. Yeah.
Also, what I like to keep in mind or remind people sometimes, so if somebody gives you a hard time, you're building an application and there's some bugs, doesn't quite work right, there's a little bit of or a fair amount of debugging and testing and stuff that you need to do before you hand it over to the users to sort of poke around on. But keep in mind, most of us, maybe not all of us, run Windows, but any system you have, either Android, Apple, Windows, guess what? There's these system updates that have bug fixes in them. So if these big corporations like Microsoft, Apple, Google can't write the program perfectly the first time, obviously it's like even the best of us can't do it. So it's to be expected if you have bugs and stuff in your application. So I'm going to bring up some more comments here. Okay, Mr. Abacus says, and the cards are called what inside the form? Okay, so let me show you that. Inside this screen, we have this form employees 5, And you know what we should do? I get really nervous with forms. And one of the reasons I don't like to use forms is, I mean, it does save you a little bit of time. So we're benefiting
Hold on
from.
there. Hold on there, real quick. I'm interrupted. I know. Is the card something that's for the form?
Yes. So each of these, like this product name, I just clicked on the card for product name. Okay. This card, it says data card over here in the tree view, it says data card 1.
Yeah.
So this whole card is for the product name. Now inside here, I've got a label here, which has an asterisk in it. So if this was a required field and the user didn't enter it and try to save it, it will appear in red with the asterisk like, hey, this is required. Also an error message. So if you had an error message for that field, it will display that error message. So here's the text box and the data key card. So that's the label for the text input. Okay. So data card is that container, and it could hold 4, it could hold even more different types of controls. So absolutely, Mr. Backus. Yeah, the cards are called what inside the form. So they're just called data cards, and they're automatically generated by the form based on the name of the column. Okay. And I've got to
go back to, but is there a way, not that I'm saying I'd want to do it, but is there a way that you can actually create a data card within your own thing as far as container?
Yeah.
Outside of a form?
Yeah. Let me show you. Let me create a new screen. So there's all kinds of like these little screen templates here. There is
I'm not saying that we should do it. I'm just asking if we can do it. I don't even know why you would want to do a data card in there, but
yeah. I'm going to create a new screen just to sort of show you this. If you go over here to this add button here, there is you to have a container, and I don't use them very much. Not that they're bad, but layout. Yeah, here's a container. Now that isn't necessarily a card. Now, what a lot of people do, there are certain things that are only created when you have a special situation, like in a form. For example, you could have like an attachments field, and there's no attachments control that you can plop over. So there's no attachment, but if you create a form based on the SharePoint list, well, let me see if I can add that. Edit fields. Now, there was a field called attachments that came over from Access, but there's another one. Let me just add this attachments and see if that one is it. Nope, that's the one from Access. And because it came over from Access, I think it's like a weird exception. But if I added, okay, so we got site contents here. Let's add a new list. We'll create a blank new list. We'll call this new list. Okay, so all we'll have is a title that is shown at least. It creates all these other columns for us. So there's an ID in here, and there is also modified, created by, all this. There's an attachments. Okay, so we'll see that. So if I add a new record, here's a little attachments, add attachment. Okay, so I can upload documents in there. So if I go over here to Power Apps, I can add in, excuse me, a SharePoint. I can go over to our Northwind importers site, and it's called, what did I call it? New list. There's our new list. I'm going to add that. And then over on the tree view, I'm going to go down to our new screen with a container. Let me add a new form. We'll make it an edit form. Okay, we're going to connect to the data, and it's going to be that new form. It might be at the bottom. Yeah. If you add any data sources in the current session, it's always going to be at the bottom, new list. Okay. So there's our title and there's attachments. There is no way to have it. You can have this little attachments separate outside of a form, but the only way you can get it is by creating a form like this. Isn't that funny? So I can hit Control C, I can create a new screen, and have attachments. I can have a user upload stuff using this. Of course, it's got an error because it's looking for the parent, so we could just say board. Okay, this is border color. We can say black. Okay, and we need to make sure there's no other errors here. So items, we'll have that to be blank for now, which it probably won't like. Tooltip, no, we don't want anything in the tooltip for now. Okay, display mode dot edit. So there's a few things you have to mess with. But here, you've got a little control in your Power Apps app where you can allow the user to upload files. Now you need to have a button here that will mess with those files. But so yeah, you can have data cards. I don't think you can add a data card directly from this insert menu here at the top, but you can add a form and get at it other ways and copy and paste. Now I see a lot more comments. So I'm going to go through these here. Yeah, data cards are inside the form. Yes, basically showing us how to solve sticky issues. Hey, Daniel Christian, thanks for stopping by, man. If you guys don't know Daniel Christian, you guys probably do know who Daniel is. He is one of the big guys, one of the big Power Apps guys here on YouTube and out in the industry. And he is an MVP, a Microsoft MVP. And he was nice enough to, he actually recommended me to be an MVP as well. But it turns out I have to be around and helping people and have a YouTube channel and doing things like that longer than just a few months. So perhaps Daniel will nominate me after I've been around for a year. But thanks, Daniel, for stopping by. And he's got another excited to be here and watch Darren show his magic. Well, thanks for stopping by, man. And also, just so you guys know, a little plug for Daniel. Daniel does what's called an R&D show. And that R&D show, he does a show with Reza, who's another, I don't know, there's like a list of what I would call Power Apps rock stars out there in social media, or Twitter and YouTube. So you got Reza, you got Shane Young, there's quite a few of them, but these are probably some of the major ones. So Daniel does a joint show with Reza. So R stands for Reza and D is Daniel. So we call it the R&D show. And they're actually doing a show. Daniel, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and type in the chat the next live stream you guys are doing. I think it's next Friday. And you guys are going over portals, I believe. So if you guys don't already know this, when you create a new Power Apps application, you can pick between 3 types of apps. You have a Canvas app, and that's pretty much what all my videos are based off Canvas apps, but you can also have a model-driven app, and it's based on the model that you build in Dataverse. Okay. And then the third type is a portal. So it's like a public facing website. There's all kinds of features and functionality that you can enable within a portal. It's not really my area of expertise. I know a little bit enough to talk about it a little bit, but I believe he is, he's going to have a whole R&D show where he's got some people from Microsoft actually going through that with them. So thanks again, Daniel. It's nice having you. Mr. Beckett says, hi, Daniel. So yeah, if you check out his username, just click on his username here within the chat. It should take you guys to his channel, and be sure to subscribe and like his videos as well. He's got lots of good content. Daniel, I think you've got something like over 300 videos. You've been around for a few years. So yeah, Daniel's been around for a while on the Power App scene. So thanks again for stopping by. Appreciate that. All right, so let's go back here and let's sort of review what we have here. So we do have products listing. We added that to our menu so we can modify products. We can modify shippers. We can look at all the orders that have been placed. We can look at all of our customers, all of our employees. Okay, so we've got all kinds of stuff. And let's take a look here at some of the ERD diagram that we have here. Okay, so We have all kinds of stuff to look at. Now, some I did add to the screen. And by the way, when we're done with this series for this Northwind Traders application, I'm going to make this application available to you guys. Okay. It's not based on my application template or anything. This is just something. Now, if you see screens down here called fix orders and fix employee privileges and so on and so forth. So this is what I've been doing on Saturdays, yesterday and the Saturday before that. So if you didn't tune into those, you guys can go back and watch those, where I actually create these screens to actually clean up some of the data. I call it SharePoint DBA work. But I have some screens down here I can show you. So this is a screenshot. This might have been a .NET application that actually used an Access backend. And so you see the different, they've got like a little bit of a, what do they call this? A switchboard in Access. The different types of things. You might have some like built-in reports to the screens. And let me see, I think I might have some other things here. And I think if you look at my Twitter feed, I actually posted let's go to my profile. I'll show you because it's sort of cool. It's very reminiscent of the old Access. Rodney says, what ERD website are you using? So if you take a look at my Twitter feed here, I actually had it. So this is the switchboard I was talking about. So this is very reminiscent of the old Access, or even some of the VB stuff, Kurt, that you and I used to do back in VB6. Create like a little menu board like that. So the ERD. So the ERD that I'm using is built into Access. Okay, so when you're inside of Access, you go over here to database relationships or database tools, and you click on this button, relationships. I think it's grayed out because we're currently looking at that. Okay. Let me see. I think that's what I wanted to show. And so yeah, this is the thing that we did yesterday. So if you want to take a look at that, that's there. And then I also have this other screen here. I was just doing a web search for Northwind Traders database, and I found this this website out here, and they had their own little ERD talking about the main entities within the project. So I at least want to start building out these screens. And if you guys, as long as you guys are still interested, and Kurt, you're still interested, we'll just continue each weekend, sort of building this out. And I feel like we've made a lot of good progress, and we'll just keep building things out. So I'm watching the chat right now, see if there's any question, comments, concerns about what we've been doing. But if you guys have any suggestions, let's say if you were building this application and you had a company called Northwind Traders and they wanted you to create this application, and if I'm not building it out the way that you think, or perhaps you have a better idea, hey, bring it up in the chat, and I'll look it over, and perhaps we'll just add in these ideas, and we'll just sort of build this thing together. So I'm looking here at the comments. Nice vid, Gustavo says, big leagues here. Hi, Darren and Daniel. Yeah, thanks for stopping by. And Mr. Abacus says, sounds great. Very good. All right. So so what do you think, Kurt?
It's just a lot.
It's just a lot.
I was thinking there was a couple things as you were going through there. You know, I'm kind of looking at this as kind of like an Amazon Lite, you know. And you know, like for instance, I'd like to see like some more graphics involved in it, like product graphics, or potential. I'm not saying that we should go around and collect pictures of stuff, but I'm saying that it might be nice to include some graphics involved in it, and also looking at Amazon, you don't, when you're looking at a supplier, you're looking at, or a product, you don't ever just see one thing. You usually see many things, right? So you also can see many suppliers within that too. So like chicken soup over here that you have up, you might have 20 different suppliers of chicken soup, you know? And so it might be nice to kind of fix some of that functionality in there too, you know? Yeah,
that's true. And you know, this could be a physical brick and mortar store that they could come in, and we have a kiosk for them to use with the Power App there, and they might want to see, like in the case of this chicken soup, they might want to actually see a picture of the chicken soup, and we have the list price there, and sort of we could actually build out a little shopping cart system as well.
Well, yeah, if Snuffy Smith was ordering this chicken soup online, he'd want to see the different opportunities for it, right?
Right. Well, one of the drawbacks, and it's really unfortunate with Canvas apps and Power Apps, is that we really can't open up our Canvas apps to people outside the organization. So that's why I talked about a brick and mortar store and a kiosk. Now,
Okay.
the only way to get around that, well, there's two ways of getting around that I know of, which is number one, you add the individual users, each one as an external user in Azure AD within your account, within your Office 365 environment, and then they could access it. That's true. There'll be a guest user within your organization, or you create a portal, and that would be but in this case, the portal wouldn't be able to access our SharePoint data. We would have to sort of migrate our data again, make sure it's in the Dataverse, because that is what the data source that the portals and also the model-driven application type relies on. Yeah. So were you aware of that limitation of Power Apps?
I was, but not at that level. So
Yeah.
I guess I wasn't thinking that through very well.
So, I just wish that was possible. I would love to write little apps that, let's say, create an app for an organization where their customers could use those apps. That would be great. I hope that eventually Microsoft makes that possible.
I mean, we got to leave room for the Angular and the C# and the ASP.NET people, So
Yeah.
There you go.
That's true. Yeah.
So did we answer the question of what was the original question of this live stream? Can we build an app in 2 hours or less?
Yeah.
So the answer is kind of maybe, probably not. Right?
Yeah. Now, if you already had an application shell, if the data was solid, okay, the data was already there, and I didn't have to do all this SharePoint DBA work. Let's say all that was done, and we had an application shell. Let's say we started from a single spot, which is we already have a menu already built out. We already have an application header where we can just plop in a logo. If all that stuff was done, a lot of this stuff would have been shortened quite a bit. And if we just had a use case of like 2 or 3 screens, I would say, yeah, with a 2 or 3 hour period, we could probably knock something out pretty quick and it would be quite useful. But we're talking
again, the practical question would be, how many times do you have that stuff sitting there laying around ready to go? Usually when you got an application getting ready to start, you're starting from scratch with something.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And Mr. Backus says 2 hours. Maybe 2 weeks.
Yeah. or longer. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll get it. So Daniel said, I had once built a food order app where you pick and choose the type of burgers and sides you'd like. The hamburger image dynamically gets built. Oh, I like that. I demoed it back in Ignite. Okay, cool. Well, Daniel, do you have a link to that people could go and check that out? If you do, feel free to post that in the chat. I'm sure people would be interested in checking that out, because that sounds pretty cool. I like that. Now, sort of give you a more realistic of building out like a timeline of building out an app. I think best case scenario, I would say, if you look at my work order application playlist, where I build out that system for a garage, the edited video was turned out to be an hour, sometimes 2 hours per screen. So let's say there was no time to think, and like all the stuff that I sort of cut and trimmed out of the video as I do my editing, I'd say for each screen, it actually took several hours by trimming it down to 1. So maybe an afternoon per screen, or maybe 2 screens per day. Now I'm not using any forums in that. So for a very involved, so this is a 20 database table application. And by the way, Daniel says, sorry, no link to that. I'll add it to my to-do list. Okay, very cool. We got 20 different database tables, and so there's quite a bit of stuff in there. So yeah, I think that might be more realistic, is to build out an application like this, maybe in 2 weeks. I think what I've encountered when you're building out an application for your employer, for a client, a customer, is that you'll build out. Maybe we'd get to this point right here and say, okay, take a look at this. Well, they're going to have feedback on the menu. They're going to pick that apart. They're going to talk about the colors. They're going to talk about the fonts, and they're going to talk about this and that. And they're also going to uncover all kinds of more information once they see it. And then they're going to think of more screens to build. So everything just sort of blows up from there. So the sooner that you can get something in front of them that they can see, the better off. What were we going to say, Kurt?
Well, what I was wanting to say was that the application is the first delivery to the clients where they start looking at that. The rule that I've always lived on is that if you do good work, it's going to make more good work. So if you're doing good work and they want to see changes, because what you're doing is the first time you bring an application to the client, it's going to open up their imagination. It's going to open up their mind to think in different paths. And then they're going to say, oh my, I didn't even know we could do that. Well, can you do this? And can you do that? And can you do that too? And you're going to sit there and say, yep, cha-ching, 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 all the way down the road. And so good work equals more good work. Now, if you go in there and you deliver some kind of a dud, I asked somebody one time back when I was learning how to program, what makes a good program? I mean, how do I know my program's good? And they said, if people use your program, it's a good program. If people want to use your program, it's a better program. So if you go in there with that with a good program or a good markup, I would look at that first development as the markup. And so then these guys are going to, if it's good, you're going to go back with a whole lot more work to do. And so,
absolutely.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I would have to say the most disheartening thing as a developer of an application is you put your heart and soul into it. You put a lot of effort into it, and the thing doesn't get used. The people don't use it. And maybe they're like, it's not very intuitive. I think we'll just use our spreadsheets instead.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that just just kicks you in the gut. So I've had some of those in my career where they're like, and they just never use it. So there's another comment here. Daniel says, I agree. You could build out a POC or a proof of concept in 60 minutes, but a good demo app takes me 10 to 15 hours. Okay, very good. Now, you know what we could do, guys, is if we want to get crazy, one of these days, and Kurt, I'll probably pull you in on this, is we'll pick a day. And I've seen some people do this on some channels after they have quite a few people that subscribe, which is like, hey, we're going to do a 10-hour, we'll call it a hackathon, a 10-hour live stream. We're going to build an app in 10 hours, or we'll just say, we're just going to live stream until we get it done. We'll order pizza. We'll just get it done. Doesn't that sound like fun?
Absolutely. That's my kind of stuff.
So anyway.
That reminds me of the old days there.
Yeah, when the deadlines come up and I used to deliver pizzas before I got into software, and then working in the food industry, you got time to lean, you got time to clean. Is sometimes when you get told, you always got to be busy, and then you get a job as a software developer, and it's like things aren't so people aren't watching you so much, so it's a little less stressful. But the deadlines are coming. You better.
I'm very jealous of you guys because I'm working in a foundry. So I mean, I would love to be able to develop the software like this. So
how hot does it get in the foundry up there?
At least 120. At least.
I can't imagine, man.
Yeah, for 10 hours. I would love to do this. Yeah.
You got to get back into it, man. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, if there's no other questions, comments, I have one word to share with you. And actually, I'll share that with you guys right now. Give me a second here. Hey, if you're getting anything helpful out of this, a comment or even a like really helps the channel. And lets people like you know this is good content. Much appreciated. Guys, for some reason, YouTube thinks you're going to like this video next. Let's see if they're right. Or you can select this playlist, which I've selected for you based on the content you're currently watching. Guys, gotta hurry. Click one of them. Otherwise, YouTube's going to autoplay some other video, which you probably don't want. Thanks.